Shootout in Sudan. Security force personnel opened fire over a government ultimatum to either retire or join the rapid support forces. We're going to go live to Khartoum with the latest. I'm Stan Grant. This is AlJazeera live from Doha. Also coming up, Russia insists the Libya truce talks are still alive after Turkey's leader criticises warlord Khalifa Haftar for walking away without signing the deal. The EU signatories to the Iran nuclear deal trigger a dispute mechanism after Tehran steps back from its commitments. Volcanic tremors rock parts of the Philippines as calls grow to move up to 1 million people to safety. Sudanese security forces have opened fire in the capital, Khartoum. They are believed to be from a now disbanded operations unit of the General Intelligence Services. Fighting has broken out over an ultimatum they were given. They were told to either retire or join the rapid support forces. Sudan's military have deployed special forces to try to contain that violence. Hiba Morgan is standing by in Khartoum with the latest. Is this still underway?
Yes, indeed, it is still very much underway, and the tension around Khartoum can still be felt. Now, let's remember how we got here. We're talking about the operations unit in the General Intelligence Services, the only unit that has the right to basically open fire and attack within Sudanese soil. So that unit, the operations unit, was given the ultimatum to either join the military or the rapid support forces or retire. And the people that we're seeing today in the streets who have opened fire, first of all in the air, then at the armed forces, were those who have opted to retire. But they're saying that the severance package that they have been offered is insufficient and they're demanding more. So lots of tension. There is a report of one person who's been injured in the crossfire between the military and the intelligence services. We've seen the military deploying tanks and helicopters to try to contain the situation. And we've heard from government officials, from the Prime Minister and the Minister of Information, who's the government spoke, saying that they're calling on the people who are firing at the army and the rapid support forces to put down their guns and find a peaceful way to come to negotiations and a settlement.
Yeah, but just some more details around this. How many people are we talking about involved in this shootout? What sort of area is it? Potentially people caught in the crossfire here as well?
Well, first of all, the operations unit from the General Intelligence Service employs more than 13,000 people. That's the number we're looking at. We don't know how many of them have opted to take the severance package rather than join the rapid support forces and the military. But what we do know is that the gunfire between the military and the members of the operations unit from the General Intelligence Service has erupted in various parts of the capital, Khartoum, as well as two other states in Sudan. So it looks like there are a decent number of people. They may not have enough guns like the Sudanese military and the rapid support forces, but they seem to be keen on making their stance and saying that the package that has been offered is not enough. But the concern mostly is on the security situation and its deterioration. So we've already heard that one person has been injured. There are concerns because most of the headquarters of the General Intelligence Services are in residential areas, that there will be more people who are injured and that eventually there will be reports of fatalities.
Hiba, thank you for that. Hiba Morgan from Khartoum. Libya's fragile ceasefire is in doubt after warring sides failed to reach a breakthrough during 8 hours of talks in the Russian capital. Warlord Khalifa Haftar did not sign the deal formalizing the truce, but Moscow says that doesn't mean the talks are dead. However, the outcome has angered Turkey's President. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is accusing Haftar of running away from negotiations. And he had this warning for Haftar's forces.
In the coming days, we will carefully monitor the choices that will be made between Haftar and the legitimate government. If Haftar's attacks against the people and the government of Libya continue, we will never refrain from teaching him the lesson he deserves.
Russia, which supports Haftar's campaign, says it will continue to push for negotiations over violence. But there have been reports of Haftar's forces gathering in southern Tripoli, threatening that truce brokered by Turkey and Russia. Steph Bassan is in the Russian capital. She says there's still a lot of optimism that the warlord Khalifa Haftar will ultimately agree to the deal.
After staying silent for most of the day, the government didn't explain anything about why Khalifa Haftar suddenly left Moscow and didn't sign the agreement. He left apparently in the early hours in the middle of the night. Now they have launched a statement. The Ministry of Defense says that Haftar is actually very positive about the final statement that they have been drafting, and that he needs 2 days to discuss this with his allies in Libya, meaning the local tribal leaders. They also said that the main outcome of the talks yesterday that lasted 8 hours is that both parties agree on this indefinite ceasefire. So there's a lot of optimism here that this ceasefire will still be signed by Haftar. Also, I spoke to the head of the Russian contact group for Libya, and he also had the same optimism. He said at the end Haftar suddenly brought more conditions to the table. He was actually present during the negotiations, but he said it's no problem, there's no need to be worried. He will definitely sign this agreement because he has no other option. That was the very clear message that I got here from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We'll have to see if this is going to happen in the next 2 days.
Jamal Ashal is in the Turkish capital, Ankara. He says President Erdogan is trying to pass the blame for any renewed violence.
He wants to show the international community that it is Haftar and Haftar's allies who are to blame for any resumption in fighting, for the instability that continues in Libya, and at the same time show that it is his political efforts and those of the Turkish leadership that are trying to establish some sort of peace and push for a political solution. The reality is that that's what has developed over the past 24 hours, at least, in the sense that the recognized government of Tripoli, the internationally recognized government of Tripoli, which Turkey backs, has agreed and has signed on the paper which stipulates having an open-ended ceasefire and working towards a political solution, and the ones that haven't have been the other side, namely that of Khalifa Haftar. Obviously that's put the Russians in a precarious situation because they've supported Haftar so much, both financially and through sending mercenaries militarily, but they are not alone in terms of sponsoring Haftar's project in Libya. There is the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, who obviously have their own considerations as well. Turkey's president insists that things must go on as they have been planned, and as we heard, there had a warning if that doesn't happen that he wouldn't hesitate to ensure that Turkey responds to any attack by Haftar's forces.
3 European countries have triggered a dispute process against Iran, which could mean more sanctions being imposed. Britain, France and Germany say Iran has reduced its commitment to the 2015 agreement to limit nuclear development. Now that's despite their efforts to diffuse tension and encourage Iran to restart negotiations with the United States. Jonah Hull joins us live now from London. Jonah, now this process has been triggered, where does it go to from here?
Well, I think it's a big deal that this process has been triggered. The dispute resolution mechanism contained within the deal, if it all is in fact to unravel now after the Europeans, the British, French and Germans have tried hard to keep the deal together following Donald Trump's withdrawal in 2018. If it all is to unravel now, this is the mechanism in terms of which it would unravel. The so-called E3, Britain, France and Germany, along with the EU, instituting this, feeling that their hands were forced by Tehran, particularly the decision last week following the killing of Qasem Soleimani, to no longer feel bound by uranium enrichment limits contained within the deal. This mechanism now gives way to a period of talks at the level of a joint commission. The joint commission, again, contained within the structures of the deal. It represents all the signatories minus the United States. Of course, there's a 15-day period. That is renewable by the parties if they think some sort of a resolution is possible. If not, it then goes to the next level, which is talks among foreign ministers. Again, a 15-day period, again extendable. And again, if there's no resolution, well, then the ultimate arbiter becomes the UN Security Council. Of course, a number of signatories to the deal are veto-wielding members there, and it would be for the UN Security Council to pass a resolution formally lifting the sanctions relief that Iran has enjoyed in terms of the deal, and so-called snapback would take place of the old sanctions that had applied before the deal was signed in 2015. Now, we've heard from Josep Borrell, he's the EU foreign policy chief, announcing that this decision had been taken. He said it was not the intention of the EU or the E3 to see those sanctions put back in place, but rather to see Iran return to the deal in full compliance.
The aim of the dispute resolution mechanism is not to reimpose sanctions. The aim of this mechanism is to resolve issues relating to the implementation of the agreement within the framework of the Joint Commission. I think it has to be clear that the objective is therefore to find solutions and return to full compliance within the framework of this agreement.
Now, all of that said by Mr. Borrell there, where there has up to now been a sort of unified stance by the European players in this to keep the deal alive. We heard earlier from Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, saying basically the time has come for a brand new deal to be put in place, a deal no less negotiated by Donald Trump. He even called it a Trump deal. He said the current deal is a flawed deal. Let's replace it with the Trump deal, adding that President Trump is a great deal maker by his own account and by the account of others.
Jonah, thank you. Jonah Hull joining us live from London. Iran's president says all those responsible for the shooting down of a Ukrainian airliner will be punished after a third day of protest in Tehran on Monday. In a televised address, Hassan Rouhani also said no single person could be blamed for what he's called an unforgivable error. 176 people died when the military mistakenly shot down the passenger jet last Wednesday.
This incident was without precedent in the history of our country. There has never been a time when a person in charge of our air defense systems or an officer has committed such an error against a passenger plane in the country's capital and so close to the international airport. While sympathizing with all the dear families that were hit by this major tragedy, I tell them that we will continue this path until discovering all the aspects of the incident and punishing those involved, and finally reassuring the people that such an incident will not happen again.
Let's get more now from Asad Beg in Tehran.
President Rouhani expressed remorse and condolences for those people killed in the plane crash, and he said that he had attempted to shorten the length of the investigation once he knew the cause of the crash. He had asked officials to let people know straight away, but he also said that this was an unprecedented mistake, and he said he promised that the government would carry on pursuing this case, and he called on the judiciary to form an independent tribunal with an independent judge to look into this case. But he also said it was a positive move that the armed forces had accepted responsibility and apologized, and that's reflected here in Iran. Many people feel it's a watershed moment. They're not used to their armed forces accepting responsibility or apologizing or saying that they've made a mistake. But again, President Rouhani did say that this wasn't the responsibility or a mistake of one individual that was operating the missile, but there was a series of mistakes. But ultimately, he did repeat the line coming out of Iran that this is the United States. The United States is to blame, setting off that cycle of events after the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, the heightened tensions on that evening the airplane was brought down. But he said this isn't an excuse for them to not pay attention to this case, and he said that there needs to be an investigation and reform to the air defense system if required. But he said that this was, and I quote, unprecedented for such a grave mistake in the history of our country.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, in the US, House Democrats say they are almost ready to send President Trump's impeachment across to the Senate for trial.
Hello again and welcome back to your International Weather Forecast. Well, for Japan, things are looking better in the next couple of days. The big system that causes the rain is starting to pull away, but your temperatures are also going to fall as we go from Wednesday to Thursday. Here's your forecast map as we go towards Wednesday. The rain showers continue here for Tokyo with a temperature there of about 12 degrees. As we go towards Thursday, though, things start to get a little bit better in terms of sky condition. We do expect to see a temperature there of 10 degrees for you. Shanghai, though, we are expecting more rain in the forecast.